Hello everyone. Welcome to this dissertation presentation by me, Ajit Kumar Mishra. I was supervised by Dr. Giovanni Quattrone. The topic for this dissertation was preferential attachment analysis and its comparison in East versus West. We have picked up Airbnb as our case study. We want to understand that is there a preference in community while sharing and its comparison in the Eastern and the Western part of the world. The agenda for this presentation would be introduction, methodology, finding and results, conclusion, and discussion. Let's start with the introduction. We know what Airbnb is all about. It is about sharing your house with others. So host shares their houses with guests. What are the advantages of Airbnb? We can save money when traveling. We can make money when hosting our houses. And whenever there's an interaction between a host and a guest, they can share about their cultures with each other, but there has been some negativity also about Airbnb. There has been denial of bookings based on race. Some instances were found in USA. There are unequal opportunities for the minorities who are usually ignored. And we have noticed that this can create social divide in the society based upon the discrimination on gender and race. So this brings us to our problem. Airbnb portal allows the guest and host to see the profile pics of each other. The accommodation chosen by a guest can then be highly influenced by the appearance of the host. Similarly, the host can then approve or reject the request for accommodation for the guest on similar lines. This can lead to discrimination based on gender or ethnicity, depriving people of equal opportunities. But do the bookings or confirmation always depend upon discrimination, or is there a preference of the guest or the host? This is something that we want to figure out with this research, and that brings us to our research question. Can we come up with a web crawler to scrape data from Airbnb and use this data to predict the demographic features of the users? Is there any kind of preferential staying pattern based on the gender, age, or race? And is this pattern similar in the eastern and the western parts of the world? We have picked up Tokyo and New York for our case study because Tokyo and New York are the financial hubs for the eastern and the western part of the world. Let's discuss about the methodology. So if we see, we came up with a web crawler which would scrape data from Airbnb website. We stored this data in MySQL database. Then we picked up some sample data. We ran them against Deepface, Betaface, and Clarify, which are the facial analysis tools. By calculating their confusion matrix and accuracy, we determined that, okay, Deepface is the tool that we are going to use for our facial analysis. Then we ran all the data against it to predict the age, gender, and ethnicity. We stored this predicted data. We ran this predicted data in the Tableau to show us some graph on the demographic features. We also came up with a null hypothesis, and with the predicted data, we generated a biparty graph to come up with the preferential attachment estimation, which can later help us in our conclusion. Let's start with the data. If we talk about the data description, Airbnb uh, provides data free of cost from their APIs. We got these data listings, reviews, and users in listings. There are many properties, but we were only concerned about these properties. From the user ID in listing, we can identify who is the host. From the host, we can identify their name and profile pictures. We stored them in our database. From whenever a guest places a review on the Airbnb website, we can make sure we can understand that this guest has stayed with this host at this particular listing. So we are using this fact to establish a relationship between the guest and the host. If we talk about the numbers, we ran our scraping tool on 4 cities in US, Las Vegas, LA, New York, Houston, and 4 cities in Asia, Tokyo, Singapore, uh, Bangkok, and Hong Kong. We picked up New York and Tokyo for our case study. If we talk about the AI tool selection, we ran the sample data of 200 images against Clarify, and this is the confusion matrix. We calculated the accuracy to be 67% in this case. We ran the same for Deepface. We got the accuracy of around 80%. And when we ran it for Betaface, the accuracy came around 74%. Now, these results were only for the sample data that we collected. In another cases, the accuracy might differ. So, but for our case, we picked up Deepface as the tool because it had the best accuracy. Then we ran all the images for New York and Tokyo against Deepface to predict the age, gender, and ethnicity. We came up with the demographics by passing it to the Tableau. And if we talk about the guests in New York, we see around 30 to 39 in 30 to 39 age group, there are 54% guests in 19 to 29, 38 to 39% of guests, and only 8% guests in 40 plus age group. There are 33% female guests, 67% male guest. There are 15% Asian, 6% Black, 20% others, and 58% uh, white ethnicity guests. If we talk about the host, if we talk about ethnicity of the host, we see that around 55% of them are white, 23% of them are others, 8% Black, and 13% Asian. Around 68% host are men, around 31% of them are women. If we talk about the age group, we have 55% in 30 to 39, 38% in 19 to 29, and only 8% in 40 plus. So we noticed that in New York, very less percentage of 40 plus people are using Airbnb. If we talk about Tokyo, we see very familiar numbers. Age group 40 has only 4%, 44% are 19 to 29, and 50% are 30 to 39. If we talk about the ethnicity, 46% are Asian guests, 38% are white guests, and these are the numbers for others. If we talk about the host, we see 52% of them are in the age group 30 to 39, around 38% in 19 to 29, and 8% in 40 plus. If we talk about ethnicity, we see 75% of them are Asians, only 18% white, 6% are others, and negligible percent are black. And if we talk about the gender, 73% guests are male and 70% guests are hosts are male. Let's talk about our hypothesis then. We say that if there is an equal opportunity for everyone in booking and approving, then chances for a female guest getting a male or a female guest stands at 0.5%. Chances of a guest of a specific ethnicity to get a host of a specific ethnicity is 0.25. And for age group, this should be 0.33. We ran our predicted data to generate the bipartite graph, and when we see the bipartite graph for gender, in case of New York, we see that the preference for a guest male is 71% host male and only 29% as host female. And similarly, if the guest is a woman, 69% time she prefers a host man and only 31% time she prefers a host woman. Very familiar story in Tokyo as well. So we can deduce that there is a preference for host men in both New York and Tokyo. When we talk about age groups, if we talk about New York, we see that if we pick up a guest of 30 to 39, 52% of them prefer a host of 30 to 39% age group. 36% for 19 to 29 age group and only 11% for 40 plus. And this story gets repeated for age group guest 19 to 29 and 40 plus as well. So we see that 30 to 39 is the favorite host for all the age groups. And 40 plus is very, very least preference for all the age groups. We can also say that people in age group 19 to 39, they prefer to mingle with each other a lot, but they do not prefer to go to a host of 40 plus. And this story is very similar in Tokyo as well, very similar numbers. So we can say that in the age group, the preferential pattern is very similar in New York and Tokyo. Then we talk about the ethnicity, and we notice that the graph is very clumsy, but we know that a guest node cannot attach itself with another guest node. It can only attach itself with a host node. So we separated the guest nodes individually to find out their preference. And if we talk about New York, Asian guest prefers 50%, 54% times white host and rest as the remaining. A black guest prefers 52% times white host and the rest as 21, 16, and 12. Similar story for other guests. They prefer 55% times white host, and even white guest prefers 57% times white host, which means almost 50 to 55% times people prefer a white host, but then the remaining times they can go to any of the ethnicity in New York. But when we talk about Tokyo, we see that Asian guest very strongly prefers Asian host and very less for others. Similarly, a black guest prefers Asian host. Others prefer Asian host, and white guest prefers Asian host. And this preference is very, very strong in case of Tokyo. Almost 75% people prefer Asian, and only 25% in each and ethnicity they go to others. Which brings us to our conclusion. We can say that when it comes to gender, both men and women prefer to stay with host men. This pattern is similar in both New York and Tokyo. When it comes to age group, the preferred host age group is 30 to 39 for all age groups. This pattern is again similar in both New York and Tokyo. When it comes to ethnicity, in New York, guests for all ethnicity prefer to stay with host of white ethnicity, while in Tokyo, they prefer Asian. And this can be because of the uh, look, because guests want to savor the local hospitality, and because of the culture of New York, which is predominantly white, and culture of Tokyo, which is predominantly Asian. However, on a closer look in ethnicity, it shows that in Tokyo, the preference towards Asian host is very, very strong, and very few percentage of guests prefer to stay with other ethnicity, while in New York, preferences for white is not very strong, and 50% guests do not mind staying with other people. If we talk about the contribution, the data mining techniques we developed can be used to scrape data for any of the Airbnb city. The facial analysis implementation using clarified deepface and betaface can be used for any of the projects. If we talk about the future work, this work can be expanded to include religion and eating habits, vegetarian and non-vegetarian, and non-demographic features to predict the preferential attachment. Usage of ratings and reviews can be used to perform sentimental analysis. We can predict negative effect on the mental well-being of a minority guest whose bookings are rejected, or those minority hosts who do not get the bookings. If we talk about the limitation, this project was time bound, so we had to perform the analysis on very limited data, so our results might be affected by those limitations. Also, the null hypothesis was highly affected because of this time limitation, and this could have been highly improved in this particular project. Another limitation was that due to the vacation season, there was limited availability of resources. So we got limited resources for running our analysis, which really took a lot of time, the facial analysis. That brings us towards the end of our presentation. Thank you, everyone.